you're going to see in certain pockets and markets that you're getting on most of the properties that we've worked on, rents are going up $200 plus. So that is hard for some families that are living, day to day, paycheck to paycheck. I think the renter has to be realistic of again, there's a want and a need. We all want to live in Beverly Hills and the mansion, but we all need a roof over our head. So I think it's picking and choosing the markets and picking and choosing the apartments that are willing to have those programs to be able to help people that are in those situations. But you're also not going to solve the problem because at the end of the day, these owners have to, again, you want to do this resident retention, there's a cost involved in that. So you're still going to see apartments that, depending on the new construction and what the rents are in the market, on some of these older properties, you're still going to see some of these big rent increases. If you try to band-aid a property, eventually you're going to pay the piper no matter what kind of maintenance staff you have. So the first piece of advice is do it right the first time. When you need to fix something, fix it. Some of that depends on what kind of long-term holder that owner is. But at the end of the day, if you do something cheap, you get what you pay for, it falls apart. So you would want to spend a little money in the beginning to make sure that the work is done right and that later on you're going to have less of expense because you did it right. As far as turnover cost, it's finding really good vendors. And it's not necessarily finding the cheapest vendor. It's finding really good vendors that give a fair price and they're going to do the work right. So again, that you're moving people into an apartment that is done right. And again, if you don't want to have a lot of maintenance costs, like you said, then you have less turnover. So you have to also make sure that you're qualifying to the right people to the best of your ability so that you also have less turnover, because a lot of times the right maintenance staff can control expenses as long as they have the right team. You see a lot of these smaller properties that they are centralized, where a big market like Chicago that has 30 unit buildings, 40 unit buildings, 20 unit buildings, they are going to a centralized office. They can't afford to have necessarily a manager on site. They do have to go to this centralized location. The larger properties, you're not going to see that. You're still going to have a manager in the office. You're going to have a maintenance person in the office. So I don't see those processes being centralized. What I do see is that you're going to have less leasing staff because a lot of people are going to that real estate format where they have a lockbox and the people can go look at the apartments themselves. You're seeing that a lot of companies are, using everything virtual so that you have less expense of payroll. So that part is very real. At the end of the day, these larger properties, you're still going to have staff. You may have an owner that has two properties. So one building is the main hub. So those other residents have to go to that other office. So that is something you're going to see. But a lot of that is already there and pre-existing. That was pre-existing before COVID. Depending on the size of the building was depending on if you went to a centralized location. Well, the manager is only as good as their leader. The manager is only as good as the person that is supervising them to give them the tools to be successful. So the legacy person, in my opinion, is those people. And they exist in the companies. And as long as you have the right leadership that are going to take accountability, that they don't play the blame game with the manager, the onsite staff, where again, you burn out a staff and they quit, and then you got to go find somebody else. So depending on your situation, you got to make sure that you have the right leadership and team, and you need to make sure you have the right infrastructure of training to an employee. A manager may have had to come to work and their spouse was deathly ill. They lost a family member that didn't survive COVID. They have no daycare to watch their kids because, again, these other people were sick. So people they were relying on wasn't there. And that was an example that you saw the teams that you had, and also you saw what kind of employers that you had and who was understanding and who made sure the checks were still coming in to pay bills. As a $1 million manager, you have to know that you're going to wear a lot of different hats, and you're making a choice, that you're getting into a business that is customer service heavy. It's understanding the mental condition of the residents and also the employees, which is a big topic right now, is mental health. And understanding you have a lot to learn. These residents today, they can go on social media, they can rip apart a property. Some of it is fair, some of it is not fair. An employee can go on social media and rip apart their company. There's a lot of data that is out there.